Welcome to today's podcast. Thanks for being on. This is David from Dadstrong.com, and you are listening to an interview today that we had with Nate Lind, who is the founder of Adsum, and he is also the founder of several internet businesses. He's done very well with those, and he is a father who adores his family and loves raising a strong family. We talk about the balance of work and life and kids and how to do this thing right for the long haul. So enjoy the interview. So here's the deal. Most dads today feel stuck, overwhelmed, like a shadow of the man they once were in their primes. And that's not okay. We're taking back the dad flag and creating a movement of men who will be strong leaders for their family, strong physically for their health, strong mentally for their careers, and strong internally for a balanced life. We are Dadstrong, and this podcast is for you. We are on. Legal notice, you're being recorded. Cool?
Got it. I consent.
Okay. Got to give you the fine print. Well, thank you, Nate. Thanks for being on the podcast. I was super impressed with how you handled the Adsum event that we were just at, down in Arizona.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I connected with you a little bit, and you got kids, and I talked to your brother for a little bit, Mike, and he was talking about your guys' weight loss journey. But mostly I want to connect with you on the fatherhood, entrepreneurial side of things. Like, there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there who are just like single young gunslingers, do whatever they can. They don't care. But there's a few of us dads out here who are also doing this thing. So can you talk to me a little bit about your journey as a dad and as an entrepreneur and how those two intertwine?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the hard part of all this, actually. I mean, a lot of, there's young gunslinging, entrepreneurs that are, taking the Adderall and burning the candle from both ends. That part's not easy either, but that part is way easier than also managing a family and, being a loving and supporting, father and a husband. And that's the sort of stuff that there really isn't any education around. Like, you don't learn how to, correctly balance your life with your children and with your wife, while also competing with the young guns that are, quick draw McGraw style, spending the 80 hours a week sort of approach to everything. So it's a tough balance. And unfortunately, it seems like I've just had to learn through the school of hard knocks and learn the hard way. But I'll tell you one thing that's been a huge help to me is, and this was something that gave me a lot of fire for entrepreneurially, as well as just like relationship and a father, is a book called The 5 Love Languages by Dr. Gary Chapman.
Yeah.
It's really interesting because I probably have learned more about business through a relationship book than I have from any business books.
Right.
And it's a little like twisted maybe that's how it worked, but really finding something that was able to illustrate to me. And just for those of you that are listening, if you've never read The 5 Love Languages, it's essentially about how each of us as humans, we express love and receive love in one of 5 ways. There's acts of service, words of affirmation, physical touch, gift giving, and quality time. And each of those, you can read the book, you can go online, you can take the test and actually figure out like what your love languages are. But when you boil it down to becoming aware enough of yourself to figure out which love languages you naturally express love and which love languages you receive love, because it's not always the same, then if you can actually figure that out, you get to a level of awareness that, oh man, it's so helpful as an entrepreneur, as a father, as a husband, because then you recognize, well, what are you naturally gifted at doing from a passion perspective, from coming from a place of abundance, from love, and then when you're conscious and you're aware of that, you can actually architect how you want your life to look. And without having that level of awareness, you may find yourself stuck, repeating the same thing over and over again and getting the same results, but not being satisfied with that.
Yeah.
That you may also find that you're just never happy because you're not getting the love you want, and you're also not expressing love to the people around you the way that they want to get it. So it's a little bit of a different take on the same entrepreneurial story of, go out, conquer, make a ton of money, build a bunch of businesses and live happily ever after. Because quite frankly, I know a lot of guys that have done just that and are more miserable than, just a clock punching, employee that, has kind of figured out some, a good mix of work-life balance and, doesn't think entrepreneurially whatsoever. So it's kind of a different take on it, so to speak.
No, that's super good. I mean, there's the cliche of like a square peg in a round hole, and I think with communication we can just do that all the time. Try to
Yep.
force square pegs in round holes. Like, why aren't you understanding me? Like, especially as a husband to your wife. I mean, talk about bringing like a foreign entity into your life when you get married. It's ridiculous how weird and hard it can be to bring, as a male and as a driven male, to bring a female into your life and share life with her and
Yep.
lay yourself down for her. Like, it is completely counterintuitive. But then you magnify that like 1,000 times with children. Yes, you love them unconditionally, but it's just hard and it's weird. And every kid is so different with their personality. So I love that perspective of maybe take some time to figure out how they receive love, not just how you want to give it. Because, oh my
Yeah.
goodness, like that fits in so well with being an entrepreneur of, I've got my product and I want my customer to buy it, but they may not want to buy it the way you want to sell it, right? And
Yeah.
that's like it's a longer process to come up with it, but I think from your experience, I mean, is it a better return on investment when you do something like that, or
It,
does it hurt you?
it's huge. No, it's absolutely huge. Men as providers and leaders of our families and of our businesses, this evolution is, we have we established a band of brothers in school, in college, and in, as young professionals and young entrepreneurs. And then, somewhere down the road, we get married, and then kind of unintentionally, the band of brothers disbands.
Right.
And now, you're starting to spend time, creating your band of brothers, so to speak, just with your spouse, and then with your spouse and your children. And the challenge is it's super harmful to our personal growth as men as well. We need to be surrounded by other men.
Yeah.
It's super helpful to have other guys that can call you on, your crap. They can see your blind spots. They can, they can hold you accountable. They can also be your accountability partners. Like that stuff is really, really helpful. For men until the day that we die. Like that should never go away. And I was completely oblivious to this until after I had so segregated myself from my band of brothers. And part of it's moving, and we grow up and we move to different areas, and as we're older we take different jobs, we've got different partners and move to different places and that sort of stuff. So that's a huge piece of it as well. But not being consciously aware of and designing your accountability group and your brotherhood is really detrimental to our success. So that's one component. I just don't see a lot of people talk a whole lot about it that I think is really powerful. And it's something as easy as having, a boys' night, once a week or once every other week, just, being out with the guys. Could be, something as simple as watching sports together or doing some activity together. It's usually something around an activity, but it's absolutely critical, I think, to entrepreneur success, the male psyche and confidence, and also just being around a supportive group that isn't really feeding off of one another. They're more feeding each other or supporting each other. So it's not like as an entrepreneur you can get the same sort of benefit by hanging out with all of your male employees. It doesn't work that way because they're eating out of your hand, or you're feeding them economically. You need to be surrounded with other peers and people that you aspire to grow into. So it's more beneficial the more you're around people that are the ones that you're aspiring to become than the opposite.
That's super good. Like, can you highlight a little bit of your journey with mentors and mentorship and how you bring that construct into raising your kids? I mean, I know as a business owner, I am sure there are people that you look up to and that push
Yep.
you and drive you.
Yep.
How do you bring that into being a dad, and how do you bring that in with your business?
Absolutely. So I'm a big believer in having a mentor and being a mentor. I've been much better at having a mentor than being a mentor,
Sure.
but
Sure.
I've been pretty conscious around it. I'm the youngest of six, so I think I kind of had that, looking up to my elders and, wanting to learn from, my older brothers and sisters and family and that sort of stuff has been kind of natural for me. So and also being humble and recognizing that I don't have all the answers. I don't want to be the smartest person in the room. I want to be the dumbest. I want to learn from the people that are around me.
Yep.
Combining that with offering people some value, providing a mentor with value, has been really helpful. You can't just expect to receive some, grand advice or receive just an amazing amount of knowledge without doing something in return. So when I first started out, I was in my 20s, and I'd gotten out of college, and I was looking, um, kind of exploring, like, who did I want to be when I grew up? I had, got decent grades in high school, enough to get into college. I started out pretty slow in college and ended up on the dean's list by the end, got my degree, and was kind of burnt out on what my degree path was and what I was going to do. And I was just looking for something. I knew I wanted to do something in business. Like, I got a degree in media art and animation, but I wasn't really passionate about the arts. I was more interested in, like, the business side of it. I like doing deals. I like getting gigs. I liked, putting together, the kind of the business side of things. So I wanted to explore that more. And I read the book, Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, and that was a really eye-opening book for me, just to understand, what are the different ways that, business could take shape, and starting out as an employee versus, the final destination is having having this passive income where your money's working for you, and you're, not
Yep.
really having to do, all this day-to-day work just to make this money. So that part was really interesting to me, and I wanted to make sure that I wasn't, 30 years down the road, just going to all of a sudden be looking back at these 3%, increases, year over year, and not really satisfied or interested in, kind of in, my career path at that point in time. So, seeking a mentor, I went to the Rich Dad Poor Dad forums. At the time, it's like richdad.com, and just started looking around. And I wasn't mindful that, like, hey, young guy looking for a teacher, it didn't really, like, come out quite like that. But I wanted to explore, and
Sounds like
just,
a Craigslist post.
yeah, it wasn't quite like that. It's probably good as I think back on it. That the smell of desperation just, never attracts women mentors or anybody. So, but I did connect with some investors, and the whole premise, after you've read Rich Dad Poor Dad, is, there's a game called Cash Flow 101. It's kind of like a
Yep.
supercharged version of Monopoly. So I went to this event, that somebody was hosting a game of Cash Flow 101 at their house, and there's a bunch of people there, playing. And at that event, I found what ended up becoming, one of my mentors, and still a great friend to this day. He's a partner of mine, actually, in my mastermind now. And that it worked out really well because, as I'm young, I had time but not money, and there tends to be this kind of evolution in, for men, that, in the beginning you don't have any money, you've got time. Later on, you've got a little bit of time and a little bit of money, and then
Yep.
as you get a little bit older, you've got more money than you've got time. So I traded time for money back then, which is kind of the age old, exchange between mentor and apprentice. And it's funny because it's even at my most, a recent mastermind I held, a good friend of mine, Perry Belcher, is a phenomenal marketing genius. Is, he's been an author of a number of books. He's, part of the Digital Marketer and the Traffic Conversion Summit. And Perry was at my event, and he was talking about the same phenomenon. I was like, Jesus, I forgot all about this. Yeah, I mean, like, typically the way things work great in partnerships and in mentorships is you've got somebody who has attained a certain level of experience. Let's say they're 30 years old and they've made, I don't know, maybe $250,000 in the last couple of years or whatever. For them to move on to the next level, it works really well if they align themselves with somebody that's a little higher in the pecking order, that's typically a little bit older, has a little bit more resources, has a little bit more status in terms of of that financial aspect. And then the younger guy works kind of in cahoots with the older guy, or works in collaboration with them, and they form a partnership. And typically, one is a majority owner, and the other one is a minority owner. And then if it works out well over time, that may flip to where the older, wiser, member of that partnership, the mentor, takes more of a passive role, for a lower stake. So that's something that I have found that works out really well. And for when you talk about like in the family with children, it's a little bit like that with your children, but not quite. I mean, it's a different dynamic, because when you're a dad, you're fully accountable, and you're starting with this little loving, little cooing baby that knows
Right.
nothing. And then that's the ultimate learning lesson. Like, children really, like, it's not so much that we teach them, we do, but it's really that we teach ourselves and that they teach us. And patience was a huge thing I did not have when my first son was born. And just I was much more high strung than I am now. I'd get much more upset and bothered and tightly wound up about things in the beginning. And children really do test your patience, but also test you as you're evolving to become a coach for them and to mentor them. But in every stage it changes. So that's just kind of an interesting aspect of it, that it's hard to explain that to guys that don't have kids, because you don't really understand until you have kids. And once you have kids, then you still don't really understand in the beginning. But then as you get older and as they get older, it's just like we're all on ladders and we're all climbing. And when I talk with guys, like, so right now I've got a 5-year-old and a 9-year-old, both boys.
Okay.
They, and when I talk with guys that are 10 years older than I am, and they've got, let's say, a 15-year-old and a 19-year-old, they're just that much further up the ladder than I am when it comes to that experience and what they get from that. And everyone will say, pretty much the same thing, is that you don't really know what you have until they're gone, when they grow up and they leave. And then also that it happens so fast, like, pay attention to them. So, recognizing that that's really where your legacy is going to be, as opposed to, how many hours can you grind into what business venture. And, I've had businesses go really, really, really well for a number of years and then still crash and burn. And then, you start over, you start differently. And I used to take that so personally as well. I like to try to not make those mistakes over and over again, but it seems like I'm destined to repeat that.
Right.
And, while I enjoy it, it is somewhat frustrating too. Like, I don't want to be in my 40s or 50s and have another 8-figure success and then an 8-figure failure. Like, those sorts of things sting more and more as I get older. But that's just that's just the nature of it. What's great is my children aren't going anywhere, and if I stop being a knucklehead and spending too much time on my business and not spending time doting on my loving wife, then hopefully she'll still be around too. To really enjoy all of it together.
Oh my gosh, it is definitely a balance. Like, it's a pretty good segue here from what we've been talking about into failure. How has failure been a teacher for you as a dad? Like, is there a
Well,
specific instance with your kids that's helped you as a dad, and then one is with your business?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, we as humans, we learn through trial and error. So it's funny because, and it cracks me up. You'll see your children do this. They'll try something and they will fail at it, and then they'll if you're fortunate enough to have to have a child that isn't immediately like just thrown off where they don't want to try it again, then that's awesome. But if you're probably for like the 90% of people that are out there, your child may become disgruntled or upset or whatever, and then get real frustrated and quit. So they have no staying power at that point, and that's really what we have to teach them. And we also have to have that ourselves as entrepreneurs and as businessmen. It's that staying power. It's that grit that really keeps us going. And teaching that to children. There were one of the speakers at Adsum this last year. His name was Mike Peters. He was sharing some stories about this as well, and he's a father as well. And he was commenting on studies that were done with children that have the most level of success throughout their life have one thing, and it's grit. It's that ability to, when in the face of failure, continue to try until they're able to overcome whatever obstacle that they were with. So that's a huge piece that children have to develop. We have to teach them how to develop that, and then we also have to have that be something that we constantly remind ourselves to overcome ourselves. So I have seen some of the most successful times of my life be followed by some of the most just traumatic failures as well, and they are all lessons. It's not personal. Don't take it personal. And I have to keep reminding myself this, and I remind my buddies that go through these challenges and stuff too. Is it's not personal. These are just challenges for us to overcome in our own hero's journey.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so good. Like, is there any kind of a secret sauce or some kind of special way that you are able to go through massive failure? I've been through some insane failure this last year, but the thing that keeps trying to keep me down is identity and failure wanting to attach itself like a leech to your identity and who you are and call you, nope, you can't move forward with this next thing because remember what happened last time.
Yeah.
But my core belief is no, I am so much more than this. I have something different to offer. I have more to offer than what I failed at. So is there a core belief underneath you that there's got to be a predecessor to grit, right? You can't have grit for no reason. So what is your belief system that's like, this is why I press forward. This is why I never quit and never give up.
Yeah, so it probably at my deepest, I'm still a third grade child proving to other children that I'm not dumb, that I know what I'm talking about.
That's a good way to put it.
So there is, if for those of for any of your listeners that are super interested in personal development and self introspection and that sort of stuff, there's some really like very healthy training you can go through. A big one that I'm a big fan of is the Landmark Education curriculum. Um, that's really, really helpful. You spend time, analyzing yourself, various aspects of your psyche and your life that have caused you to create those moments of belief. And there's typically, there's typically three of them. I don't want to spoil it all for those of you that haven't done Landmark. I would, just go to landmarkeducation.com and look around for the Landmark forum somewhere in your area and go to it. It's only like $500 or $600. It's worth every penny. And then the next one is finding a really, really good neuro-linguistic programming coach. And I heartily recommend Susan Stageman in the Dallas, Texas area. I used to fly to Dallas once a month for 2 years to go through her curriculum. And the reason why that's so important is you're always carrying somebody with you. Whether you're alone or not, you're actually carrying, multiple facets of yourself with you. And those aspects of yourself, those parts of yourself are what's enabling you to succeed or what's limiting or sabotaging yourself as you're moving through life. And the identity and the belief factors that we all carry with us were formed because of stories that we created for ourselves as we were growing up. And when you start to understand those, then you can consciously elevate yourself as opposed to blaming this business blew up on me again and I'll never get this right. I can never get past the the $100,000 mark, or I can never get past the $1 million mark, or I can never get past the $10 million mark. Those are ladders that we can keep climbing, and I keep bumping into those too. I can get to like $30 million a year in gross sales on as an e-commerce entrepreneur, and then I keep it's like my head is bumping into this this ceiling, and I'm and then something happens and I'll slip down a couple of notches on the ladder, and I gotta climb back up again. So I still go through that myself. And if there's somebody out there that's listening and you keep bumping into that $100,000 mark or whatever it is, then the more you're able to become aware of what things you're doing to sabotage your own success, then you can start to just let that stuff go. And that's really what it is. Like, we're clinging to things that are so important to us, and we hold those beliefs as part of our identity, and that they're that's core to who we are and what we are as humans, when that's not really true. Like, you can let go of some of the self-sabotaging aspects of our psyche, and of our belief patterns, and of our morals and ethics, and things that we've got these belief systems around money's bad, and rich people are evil, and if I become rich, then I'm bad and I'm evil. Bullshit. That's all just stuff that we make up about things. And a lot of folks don't want to do the hard work to dig into their own beliefs and their own history to figure out where those self-sabotaging beliefs are coming from. And until you do, you'll never be successful. And there's a reason why entrepreneurs spend more money than anybody on personal development. It's because you are your own glass ceiling. You will never achieve past what your belief system and your identity will allow you to. And looking at super successful entrepreneurs, Richard Branson and Elon Musk and Steve Jobs, and like all of these these different types of super successful entrepreneurs, there's something that's common to all of them. They're willing to put personal development as a main component of their education, and that they're continuing to learn, but they're continuing to learn about themselves, and that's what's allowing them to achieve that success.
That's amazing. That's like, you are creating a beacon for somebody to follow, right? Because we are leading somebody, whether we know it or not, right?
Yep.
There's somebody constantly looking up to us, and I think as a father, if we kept that mindset, that we have people who depend on us, that, I mean, first and foremost, our life is not our own. There are other people that not only depend on us, but they need us to be better than what we are. And we, down the line, we need ourselves to be better than what we are. So I love that mentality of never stop training, never stop getting better. And the moment you get complacent and you feel like, I've got this, I'm as good as I'm going to get, that's when you, like, I've heard the term, when you're green, you're growing; when you're ripe, you're rotten. And
Yep.
that's, I mean, I think that's true as a father too, like with your kids. I mean, if you think you're always right and you think you got it all down, and then your kid comes home with whatever issue that is you've never heard of before, you got to go figure that out. You got to go figure out how to be a better father to help him through that. And that humility process of saying, you know what, son, I think I failed you in this area. Like, that's not stuff that we talk about as entrepreneurs. We don't want to talk about failure. As dads, we don't want to talk about failure and having to say, I'm sorry to my kids. But oh my gosh, how much is that encouraging people who are watching us to say, you know what, it is okay to screw up. It's just another part of education on our journey. So I'm right with you. That's awesome.
I have the biggest successes I've had have followed where I'm vulnerable enough to share some of my biggest failures. And when it's so unique and unusual for people to share their failures, and what's even more, what's so unique about that is, especially with social media and all these different media platforms and that sort of stuff, everyone's playing the looking good, avoiding looking bad game. But as soon as you stop that, and you just share authentically around challenges and solutions to those challenges, you're like a magnet. Like, stuff is just drawn to you. It's incredible. That's how I built the community of entrepreneurs that that I'm surrounded by. And I've seen the growth of that stymied when I stopped sharing my own challenges and tribulations. So just going back in my own recent history, and watching when I've had, an exponential growth of my own, community and platform to be able to communicate to, it absolutely follows the exact trail of what did I try that didn't work, and then sharing that, and then okay, now that I know that didn't work, here's what did work, or here's something else I found out about this, and that's where people are really drawn to that, because there's just something so primal about it, and it's so rare. Like, there's no better time in history to be able to impact the entire world, like, through the vehicles of communication than we have. Yet, despite all of that opportunity, there's so little authentic sharing, and so little, when people see it or they hear it, like, those are the folks that have everyone's attention. Like, those are the people that draw to them the the hordes, the masses. And it's just really unique to see that, and see it over and over and over again, and yet still people have that reluctance to share authentically or vulnerably, because of fear of losing status, or to share something that's going to cause you to lose status in the eyes of others that you don't bother sharing, or you're not even willing to take the risk.
Right. There's this idea of a fear of unknown that, I'm walking through personally. Had a big business failure this last year, lost all of our money, all of our resources, and started from scratch. And then decided, okay, I'm tired of chasing money. I'm tired of chasing an offer and trying to create something that is all money driven. Why don't I start out by just trying to create value? And that has been one of the most vulnerable spots for me. Of there is so much unknown in front of me, and I don't know what I don't know, and I do understand that, as contradictory as that sounds. But this community of guys, the Dadstrong, the guys that are listening right now, have also joined in that journey of, I don't know what tomorrow holds. I don't know what training up a teenager looks like. I need help. And I think, as yourself, as a leader of a lot of entrepreneurs, to be able to be vulnerable and say, hey, I'm Nate Lynn, and I'm growing here, but I have a glass ceiling and I don't know how to get past that. And I'm sucking right now at this. And when you open yourself up to, I need help, there's so many, like, people have some amazing hearts out there who are like, you know what, this one little thing did it for me. I don't know if that'll help you, but it opens us up to mercy, to people to come in and say, I really want to pour into you and help you in some way. And I think when we protect ourselves and say, you know what, I got this all figured out, whether you do or don't, and you put that fake mask on, then it blocks you, right? It blocks you from any kind of help that might want to come in, whether it's for your marriage, for your kids, for your business, for your friendships, whatever. I think it's just, I totally agree with you. Like, this mask that society's putting on right now, we've got it all figured out. We clearly don't have it all figured out. There's so many issues, right, politically, that are going on right now. It's like, there's so much garbage out there with mass shootings. And I just read an article, the last 26 out of the last 27 mass shootings were accomplished by fatherless kids. And like, oh my gosh, like, let that just settle for a second into you.
Yeah.
If we are not present with our kids, all the $100 million, the $200 million, whatever we put away by the end of our lifetime means absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
If we're not raising up a legacy for our kids to grow up into, not just money, but the character of the individual that we become, right? So I just want to say, like, I obviously want to honor your time, and I really appreciate the heart that you've brought to this industry. I came out of a trial and continuity industry and completely shut it down because I realized how much fraud was involved. And when I came to this last event, I got to connect with so many guys like Mike Peters and just some really amazing individuals that, like, go after value. There's so much more than just chasing money. You have to have this mission and this cause that's bigger than a paycheck. And I see that you have that. I see that you want to raise the standard of e-com guys out there who aren't just chasing money, but they want to do it right and provide true value out there and build a real brand. And I think that's just super honorable. So thank you for doing that. And thank you for being who you are, Nate.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for being on here. And I wish you the best of luck on your journey here.
You got it. Anytime I can help, just give me a call.
Thanks for listening to this podcast. I am so grateful you got to hear what we just went through. And if you love what you just heard, come join us over at Dadstrong.com and grab yourself some swag, grab a hat, a shirt, sport the brand that is helping dads be strong for their families, changing the world one household at a time. Thanks again for listening, and hope to see you over at Dadstrong.com.